Everyone, good morning and good evening. I think we have people from India and also from the US. So good evening to all. So
Hi.
we'll Hey, hi. Uh, so can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. All right, thanks for confirming that. So let us go ahead and get started. A quick intro about myself. My name is Dixon, and I have been in healthcare data integration space for the past 14 years. So I work as technical architect and lead in many different projects in many different areas. I also where I predominantly work with HL7 data standards like HL7 V2, Fire, and use integration engines like Mirth Connect, Rhapsody, and all. So, alongside HL7 V2, I also worked on CCDs and IHE standards as well, and a little bit on X12 too. And I worked on various integration engines like Rhapsody, Mirth Connect, Integration Buddy, Ensemble, and Connector. And I've been training resources for the past 7 years. I think it's 7+ years, more than 7 years now. I mean, specifically into online training space. I was teaching before that as well, when I was working for various corporate companies, but have been explicitly training online from last 7+ years. So today's session will be an introductory session, just to understand the basic stuff of HL7. So by the end of today's session, we'll be looking at few topics. Specifically, we'll talk about where do we hear this term called HL7, and where does this come from, and what is the hospital workflow. We'll take a quick look at the workflow aspect of HL7, and then we'll talk specifically of what is HL7 and what is an interface. Then we will see how the name HL7 has arrived and why did we give that name, right? And then we'll take a look at role of HL7 in terms of interfaces, and we'll talk about interoperability and HL7 structure. So that's going to be the path that we will be going through today. And by the end of today's session, we'll get a fair idea on how to read an HL7 message at least, or to see the structure of an HL7 message and read it, right? So let's get started. So there are a few general terms that we need to understand before we jump or take a deep dive into today's session. So these terms or acronyms are frequently used all throughout the training. So I thought it's better we get introduced to them before we use them a lot. So PM is nothing but PM or PMS. You can call it as either one of them, and they are nothing but practice management system. Uh, Apparently, this is an application that is used by front-end staff in the hospitals or clinics. So this is used for capturing patient basic demographic information like patient name, date of birth, gender, and their address, insurance information, and also to manage the billing aspect of the hospital life cycle. Then you have another application called as EHR, which is electronic health record. EHR is used by hospitals to store the clinical data and this is majorly used by doctors and nurses to maintain and manage the clinical data of the uh, patients. Then you have something called as HIS. HIS is Hospital Information System. This is a combined console. You can call it as HIS. You may also hear the terms called HIMS or HMIS, which stands for Hospital Management Information System or Hospital Information Management System. So those are used as a single application. It has all the modules that we have as part of PM and all the modules that are part of EHR. So this is kind of a bigger application, consolidated application, which would cater all the needs of the hospital. And then you have LIS. LIS is Lab Information System. So this is another application again, which is used specifically by the lab staff to maintain, manage, and send the uh, orders and results of the various tests that doctor might be placing, and everything or every stuff that is related to a lab will be maintained or managed within this application. Then you have few classifications. One is ICD, which is nothing but International Classification of Diseases. This will let you know, basically this is a library of all the diseases listed down. So you have every disease that is mentioned out there in this particular library, and each disease will have a unique ID to identify it across the globe. So ICD is a recommended classification by World Health Organization. All the hospitals in the US majorly uses ICD. Then you have CPT, which is current procedural terminology. So current procedural terminology will is also another library again. While ICD is used for classification of diseases, CPT is used for classification of procedures that can be performed once a disease is diagnosed. Let's say a patient has a fever, so there will be a dedicated code for that particular diagnosis in ICD. And the procedure that doctor is going to perform, let's say a doctor might have said that let's administer some medicine, right? So that is a procedure that is going to be performed on the patient, and that will have a specific procedure code, which is part of CPT. So there are various versions of these that will be released over a period of time. So currently ICD-10 is being used widely in the US, and also that is the current standard. And CPT, you have CPT version 4 that is being used in the current industry. And then you have last three terms are specifically used in HIE space. HIE is nothing but Health Information Exchange. Health Information Exchange is a program that is used uh, by hospitals, organizations to maintain a central repository of a patient data from all the different entities or different hospitals that are out there, right? And CCDs and IHEs are standards that are used to facilitate this data exchange between hospitals and the HIs. Okay, so we can ignore last three terms for now because those are something that we will take a look at the end of the training in the last 2-3 sessions. But we need to be aware of the first 5-6 sessions that we are taking a look at. 5-6 terms that we are looking at here. All right, so let's quickly jump into our hospital workflow, which is our next topic. So I basically run through the workflow because that is where all begins, and this is where we need to understand in detail on uh, how the hospital runs and how HL7 messages come into play, keeping in view about this hospital workflow. All right, so let us go ahead and check that out. So to begin with, we all know that as patient, we go to the hospital and we meet the receptionist. I mean, nowadays we are calling them up and scheduling an appointment, or we are providing our basic details through a website or a web portal that is provided by the hospitals, and then giving the basic details to them. But that being said, once you talk to the receptionist, they will take your basic details like all the your name, your date of birth, your gender, your address information, email address, and various other stuff, right? And once they get that information is basically called as demographics. And this demographic information will flow over from the receptionist desk to the doctor's desk. Okay, doctor will be using an application called as EHR, right? So receptionist will be using the application called as PM. So once the patient details are saved in the PM system, all the demographic information will flow from PM to EHR, which is used by the provider or the doctor. Okay. And then After demographics details are saved, obviously the receptionist would also ask the patient whether they are, uh, I mean, they are here to meet whom, right? And uh, they would go ahead and schedule the appointment for a specific doctor based on the patient's requirement. Okay, and that appointment, once it is scheduled in the receptionist desk, which is nothing but the PM application, again, this appointment information will also flow over to EHR. So that doctor can see the appointments that he is going to have for a specific day. All right. And then once the demographics and appointments are sent to the provider, now the next step is for the patient to meet the doctor. Now, when doctor receives this appointment details, he would go ahead and call the patient. A patient might be waiting in the lobby, and uh, patient will meet the doctor and he will start discussing about his issues with the doctor, right? So this is called as an encounter, which is one of the most common terms that we uh, encounter in that we see in real time. So keep encounter is different from appointment. This is where most people get confused usually. Appointment is just a schedule, locking down some time and saying that this time slot is dedicated or booked for so and so appointment. All right. So it is little bit different than encounter. So encounter is nothing but when patient meets the doctor in live and talk to them and discuss with them about their problem on what's going on. So that is called as an encounter. Now, once patient meets the doctor, um he will go ahead and discuss the problems, and doctor might be able to diagnose the patient just by looking at his symptoms or his current status of the patient, which is not the case in most of the scenarios because they will definitely want to go ahead and perform further analysis to concretely say that yes, this is a problem. So what doctors would do, they would go ahead and place a lab test, and these lab tests will be sent over to the lab. So doctors will send out an order to the lab system. Lab system will receive that order, and once the lab system receives the order, they will go ahead and collect the samples, get the test done, and send the results back to the EHR system. So when lab is receiving the order, it is saved or it is maintained in a lab information system. And once it is saved in the lab information system, they will generate the results, save it in the lab information system itself, which will again come back to the provider's desk to the EHR system. So we are looking at three applications that are involved here, which is PM, EHR, and LIS, right? Now, once doctor gets the results, he will analyze and he will prescribe the medicine and all. And later, all the charges with respect to these entities or these services that are provided will be sent back to the receptionist. The receptionist will go ahead and generate a invoice or bill or whatever you want to call it as. They will generate the bill and they will say that this is your bill in case if patient doesn't have an insurance. If patient has an insurance, they will raise the claim and they will send that claim to the insurance company. All right. So that concludes the life cycle of patient, and this is only specifically for an outpatient visit where patient is not getting admitted to the hospital. If at all it is an inpatient visit, then the cycle would be totally different, right? I mean, patient will visit the hospital and then he gets admitted. He will have a daily routine of sequence of medicines, and I mean, there are a lot of things that happens during an inpatient. But for us to understand about HL7, I think the outpatient visit cycle is enough so that we can relate and clearly see why HL7 messages are used in real time. Next, let us look at the problem. So we saw that in the previous slides, this hospital workflow will act as a blueprint for us all through the training, because we will be talking about this hospital workflow a lot of times while we progress through the training. And if we look at that particular flow or life cycle, we understood that data is transacting from one system to another. Let's say a patient is registered in the PM system, then that demographic information is sent from PM to EHR. Similarly, from EHR to lab, from lab to back to EHR, and there are various directions where the data is flowing from one application to another, right? So in that context, let's look at what problem we had and how HL7 has solved that problem. So before we jump into the actual problem or actual look at the actual architecture, I just wanted to give a simple metaphor using which we can relate easily to the current problem that we are about to discuss. Let's say we have three different people from three different countries, uh, per se India, US, and China, right? And we are talking about a scenario almost 50, 70 years ago. If they have to converse with each other and uh, what they have to do, if they have to talk to each other regarding some trade or regarding anything, obviously if the US guy has to talk to Chinese, they have to learn Chinese, or Chinese guy has to learn English. And similarly, if Chinese guy has to talk to Indian guy at the same time, they have to learn India's regional language or national language, which is Hindi. In that way, if certain country has to interact with more than 5 countries, they have to go ahead and learn the language of that particular country, and then they will be able to converse very well, right? So that was really a very big problem, and it is not very feasible. So that's where English has emerged as a common medium of communication between all the countries. So now all that they need to know or learn is English, and they can converse with each other. So there is a common standard that has been laid down and which is followed in the entire world today. Similarly, whenever data is transacting from one application to another, we see a very similar problem like the language barrier that I just told. Let's see how that problem is encountered when we are transacting or when data is moving from one application to another. When you talk about any application, it has two parts to it. You have front end, which you see in your screen. To enter the data, like an application form, you will enter the patient details and click on save. When you click on save that patient demographic information, it will be saved to the database. So every application will have these two entities. It will have the front end, it will have its own backend database where the data is saved in a tabular format. Similarly, in electronic health record also, you have the application and then you have the database where the data is saved. But the tabular structure that is present in the database here is totally different from what we have here, kind of different languages. If you consider these two as different entities, they have different languages, meaning different architecture, different design, different tabular structure for storing the same data. Patient has what data? He has name, date of birth, gender, SSN, and address, email address, and this information, right? Same data is stored in a different way here in PM database. Same data is stored in EHR in a different format altogether, or different tabular structure altogether. Now, when the data is saved into PM application, obviously it has to flow from PM to EHR. So there will be data engineers who will go ahead and sit, discuss of how do we extract data from this PM application, send that data real time to this EHR application and insert the data there. So they would need to have a thorough understanding of both the databases. Then only they can go ahead and extract the data from here and then insert the data into this database. And this is a achievable feat, but problem is it is a time consuming aspect. There are a lot of things that you will discuss about in order to have this facilitated. For example, they have to talk about in what format the data has to come out, whether it is JSON, XML, or just a plain text. What should be the format of the data? And if we are following a certain format, where we are sending what kind of information? Where are we sending first name? Where are we sending last name? in the format of the data that we want to exchange. And they would also need to talk about how frequently we have to send the data and how much data can be transacted at once. So there are a lot of things that has to be planned and executed in this aspect, which is a time consuming process, right? And similarly, if it is just with one application, let's say it's taking 6 months or 9 months or 1 year, and if the same thing has to be done with different applications, which is a very general requirement in the healthcare industry of sending data to multiple applications. So if one application itself is taking such long time, then how much time it would take for other applications to integrate, right? So that factor is what was the biggest problem back then in 1980s. That's when HL7 has come to rescue, which solved the problem. So what HL7 has done is HL7 stood out as a common medium of communication. For now, we'll call it as a language, but it is not an actual language. So for our understanding or for our ease of relatability, I will call it as language for now. So let's say that HL7 language has come to the rescue, and this language has solved the problem that we had in terms of data exchange. How did it solve? HL7 said that there is a defined structure, there is a defined way of exchanging the data, there is a defined way of or a standard way of communicating the information from one system to another. So all that they had to do now is to every individual party has to know and learn about HL7. All right. And once they know about HL7, all that they have to do is convert the data or translate the data into HL7 and send it to the destination system. They don't need to explicitly discuss where we are sending what kind of information. Why? Let's say PM registered a patient in the database. That patient information will be translated to HL7 and that HL7 will be sent to EHR. As everyone understands HL7, they can go ahead and interpret HL7 message, understand what is being sent, and then they can write it to their database. This way, the timeline that is there, or timeline that is uh, consumed in order to go ahead and develop one interface has drastically come down. Uh, Literally, it has fall down to 3 weeks, not 3 weeks, but 4 to 6 weeks. Okay, so that was a great help. During that era, during 1980s. That's how HL7 has taken birth. And later, back in late 90s, the standard version of HL7 was released. Okay. So any questions so far? I'll pause here for a bit. Any questions? All right. I'm not hearing anything. So I see there is a question in the chat. Okay. All right. It's not a question. So let's proceed to the next topic. Now, I've been telling you that uh, we are exchanging data, we are sending the data, and we are transacting that in the form of HL7. That is what we understood from the previous slide. So we have to send the data from one system to another, which is inevitable. And we are doing that through HL7. But what is this called? We are sending the data, but what is that medium called as? So that medium called as interface. So an interface is nothing but a bridge between two different applications, which will help us or enable us to exchange that HL7 messages. And this happens between two different applications. It doesn't matter what kind of database uh, you are dealing with, because different applications might be using different databases. Okay, let's say for example we have um, PM application on SQL database, and EHR application on a flat file database. Okay, so it doesn't matter which database we are dealing with. End of the day, we are transacting through an HL7 using interface as the medium. So HL7 operates at an application level, which we'll see in the upcoming slides. But HL7, as it operates at an application level, it doesn't matter which database you are dealing with. So what is HL7? It is a standard medium of communication to exchange or to have applications talk to each other. And the name of HL7 comes from the concepts of OSI layer, which is nothing but Open Systems Interconnection Model. I'll talk about this OSI layers in the next slide. But more than 28 countries in the world are using HL7 today. They are explicitly using it for many different interface implementations all over the world. Okay, other countries were a little late to join the party, but US was far ahead. Other countries like Middle East countries like Dubai, Abu Dhabi, countries like India, Australia, Europe have started using it recently. But this is being used a lot in a lot of countries as of today. Let's talk about OSI layers and why it is important to understand OSI layers. We don't need to have an in-depth understanding of it. I'll just give you an overview, but this is a very beautiful concept. If you want to understand more about OSI, you can just wiki it and take a look at it, Google it and take a look at the wiki. You will get a better understanding of what is OSI layers. So apparently, I am presenting my presentation on my screen, but how you are able to see it on your system. If you talk literally how this is happening, when I am presenting the data on my screen, the packets are traveling all through the internet and reaching your system. And those packets are interpreted and they are presented on your screen. Okay. So how is that enabled? That happens through the OSI layer. So what you're seeing at the top on your screen is an application layer. Just assume that behind that application layer, there are 6 more layers. Those 6 more layers will facilitate the transaction of these packets. Okay, we have presentation session, and at the end in the physical layer, all the data that I am presenting it is broken down into bits and pieces of packets. Those packets will travel through the Ethernet cable and it will reach your system. And in your system, they will be reaching the physical layer and they will be reverse interpreted and it will be shown in your application layer. That is OSI model. Just understand and read through it. It is really very nice. Why is that related to HL7? Now, the name HL7 has been derived from this concept. We have the application layer, which is the 7th layer. Out of all the 7th layers, application is the 7th layer or level 7. And as we are dealing with health data, it is called as health level 7. So that is how we ended up in getting that name called health level 7. It is because of this OSI model. And as we are dealing with the data in the 7th layer. Now, let's take a look and overview of HL7 message. In fact, so we looked at what is the data exchange requirement that we have. We looked at what is the problem statement that we encountered, how HL7 has solved it, and we also saw why did the name HL7 has come into play. Now let's jump deeper into HL7 message, actual message, to know how to read it, how to understand it, and what is the structure of an HL7 message. Okay, so like any other language, so I told you earlier itself that we'll call it language for now. Like any other language, HL7 has its own syntax, its own grammar. So we will need to understand those full stops, commas, exclamations, and all. What are those symbols in terms of HL7? So we will see that down the line in the upcoming slides. HL7 has different versions. So 2.3.1 is the most famous version that is used, which has around 12 chapters and 5 appendices. There are more than 50 data types, more than 80 message types, more than 86 event types. So we may not relate to them immediately right now because we don't know what these message types, data types, event types are. But these are the things that will help us to divide HL7 messaging into different sections. Okay, just to give you an overview. So we'll talk more about these entities, data types, message types, event types down the line, where you will get a clear picture. Okay, while that happens, let's look at the history of HL7. Right. So as I said earlier, it all started back in 1980s. So usage of HL7 was there in late 1980s, but actual version was released in 1997, May 13. So that's 2.3. Then later, after 2 years, we had another version of 2.3.1. And then there were other subsequent releases till version 3. Version 3 was released in version 3 was released in 2005. But version 3 was not very much welcomed by the industry. Okay, there are many reasons. Out of them, couple of main reasons are version 3 was complete restructuring of the entire format that HL7 V2 had. V2 is version 2. So when I say V2, I'm talking about version 2. So V2 was in a different format altogether. And with introduction of V3, the format completely changed. The structure, the concepts, everything got changed. And uh, it was complicated. Honestly, when compared to V2, V3 was very complicated because of the new concepts that were introduced, new structure that was introduced into the into that picture, right? So we needed specialized resources who would understand V3. So that was lacking in the market. Second important thing, why did people did not welcome it much, or industry did not welcome it much, is it was not adding a significant value. Let's say you have a mobile application. There is an upgraded version of that application. Why would we upgrade it? To use new features, to see what value it adds with the help of new features, right? So version 3 was not adding any such value. It is just replication of the same interfaces in a different format altogether. And industry was not like, why do we need to spend more money? Because we are already facilitating or transacting data using V2. Why do we need to move to V3? That is the reason HL7 V3 is not used anywhere. I mean, I wouldn't say that it is not used anywhere, but it is very minutely used in the entire world today. Okay, in fact, I never worked explicitly on HL7 V3. I did not get an opportunity to work on Excel V3. I implemented hundreds and thousands of interfaces, but I never worked on V3. So just imagine what is the population, HL7 V3 population that we could have in terms of interfaces. Right. And then later in 2014, version 2.8.2 was released. Seeing the downside of V3, V2 was enhanced a little more to make sure that all the advanced concepts are also included. Uh, and HL7 version 2 was still moving ahead in terms of versions. So HL7 version 2.6, 2.7, 2.8 were also released further, even V3 being there. Okay, V3 is not enhanced further. Uh, but there is one subset of V3 called CCDs, continuity of care documents. That is a subset standard of V3, which is most successful because V3 CCDs was solving a problem that the industry had at that point of time. We are talking about this back in 2005, almost 18 years ago, right? So it was solving one core problem, and it was a massive hit because it was rightly hitting the point of that particular problem, which is to exchange documents between different clinical entities. So until V3 CCDs was released, there was no scope of exchanging the documents. After V3 was released, it has made it easy and standard. Okay, so that's the reason subset of V3 was a successful aspect, but V3 as a standard couldn't stand in the industry. Okay. Next, we had Fire. So the reason why Fire is not an HL7 V2 standard. Sorry, Fire is not an HL7 V2 standard, but people do ask me at this point that then what is Fire? So Fire is the latest standard which is released by HL7, but it is not related to V2, not related to V3. Okay, so Fire as a standard is released to go ahead and have all the latest technologies to be used in today's world. For example, HL7 V2 cannot use REST APIs. Fire is completely based on REST APIs model architecture, which is the common industry standard in today's world for data exchange, especially in terms of mobile apps, wearable technologies like Fitbit or your other non-invasive devices that you use for testing your blood sugar, blood pressure, and all of these things use REST API technologies to exchange the data. So we wanted a standard to be there in the industry which can satisfy those needs as well. That's when Fire has begun. Fire started in 2010, and it did really boost up a lot when COVID started in 2019 after release of R4. Okay, so in today's world, we are seeing Fire implementations as well. One question that I frequently receive here or get here is, so do we need to learn Fire or HL7 V2? Fire is still evolving. It takes a lot of time to evolve. Fire has the idea to replace HL7 V2, but not in the near future. Okay, so both has to coexist for a very long time. And even after that, uh, unless Fire is adding a new value to the existing V2 interfaces, people will not migrate to Fire. The same problem that we saw in V3, right? But all the new implementations might go in Fire. That too, provided Fire is completely matured. Fire is not completely matured yet. It is it is at its baby stages. It will take almost maybe another 5 to 7 years for it to develop fully. And until that point, HL7 V2 and Fire will coexist for a very, very long time. Even after Fire is matured, there will be a lot of history of interfaces that are there that are built over a period of 35, 40 years. So letting them go off immediately is also not a simple task. So it will take a long time for HL7 V2 for us to forget about HL7 V2, not in the near future. So both will coexist for a very long time. So what are the uses or advantages of sharing using HL7 messaging? It will give us the ability to share medical, demographic, and billing data with HL7 enabled applications. Data transfer is purely in the form of messages. So small unit of data exchange, small messages can be transacted from one system to another. No special tools are required for exchanging or for creating these messages, and code is always in the human readable format, meaning it is in the ASCII format. Even if you don't understand the structure of HL7 message, if you take a deeper look at it, you will be able to understand what that you'll be able to at least figure out one or two elements, data elements from the message. Okay, then last you have it is independent of the OS because of the application layer, so it can work on any OS. All right, and it can connect from any application to any application. Next, why do we need this standard? Right now, I told you that HL7 is a standard, and this standard is used for sharing this medical data. It will help us to have quicker insurance claims because everyone doesn't need to explicitly discuss about how they are exchanging the data. If there has to be an exchange between two different parties, all they will discuss is uh, what event type, what message type we want to use. Rest of the structure is standard, so they don't need to explicitly discuss. There will be minimal discussion anyway, but not as much as it was required in the earlier days. Okay, so that would help us to have quicker insurance claim payments because we can build interfaces immediately and send out the claims and get the data exchange in the form of electronic transfers. Right, applications can talk to each other. Overall, when the data is exchanged through the electronic format, it is even more, it maintains the best quality because someone doesn't need to enter the data manually, where there is a lot of scope of error. With the electronic exchange, all of that will be minimized. So how does HL7 messaging works? Let's see that. So HL7 standard is written from a perspective that we have uh, an event happening. This is where we will want to go back to our hospital workflow. So when we were talking about hospital workflow, in the first instance, when the patient talks to the receptionist, they will talk about their um, uh, receptionist would ask whether they are here for the first time. If they are for the first time, then they would take the demographic details like name, date of birth, gender, and all. So capturing all of that details is called as one event. Okay. And that event demands the data to be sent from one system to another. So HL7 works on that particular principle that there are series of events that are happening within the hospital. Okay. So those series of events may require the data to be sent from one system to another. So that is the basic principle of HL7 messaging. There will be series and chunks of events, and these events will want the data to be sent from one system to another. Okay, we'll explore more on what trigger events are in tomorrow's session, but I hope you got an idea that there are events that will be happening right from the moment the patient enters the hospital till he leaves the hospital. So how you can categorize them? You can categorize them into various categories like registration related events, appointment related events, lab related events, charges related events. So you have various events that will be happening within the hospital, pharmacy related events and all. Okay. Next, let us take a look at the anatomy of an HL7 message. Now, this is where we will explore more about the HL7 message structure. We will just have an intro today of what is the structure. In tomorrow's session, we will take a deeper understanding of how to read the HL7 message and how to understand the structure of HL7 message in detail. All right. So I just wanted to add a metaphor here so that we can relate and understand easily. So let's say that there is a rack in a house and there are multiple shelves in the house, right? So we have clothes in the first shelf, books in the second shelf, third shelf also has some books. Every shelf is divided into different compartments. First compartment is dedicated for t-shirts, second is dedicated for trousers, third one is dedicated for shirts, and so on. So everyone in the house will be aware of this structure or design, right? Let's say that out of two people at home, one of the persons is going out um, for a tour, and let's say that he forgot his t-shirt that he has to take. So he calls the other person who is at home. He tells that, "Hey, can you get me that t-shirt?" The other person at home goes to the rack, will access the first shelf, first compartment, get that t-shirt, and will go and give it to him, right? So in this exchange of dialogues between these two people, the first person did not tell the second person where the t-shirts are. Second person was aware of the structure of the rack, and he was able to access that t-shirt and get it to him. Similarly, there are other metaphors like, let's say, we have dedicated places at our home for having our keys at one place or having our torch at one place, so that even if it is dark, even if let's say that there is you are unable to see anything, still you will be able to navigate to that point and get that particular material you want to get, right? So HL7 messaging is also designed based on that very same principle, that the entire structure of the data that has to be exchanged is predefined. Okay, what is that structure? We'll see it in the next slide. But HL7 works on this very same principle that First rack, first compartment is dedicated for t-shirts. In the same way, first rack, first shelf, first compartment is dedicated for first name. First shelf, second compartment is dedicated for last name. So in this way, you have predefined structure. So we'll see the predefined structure after looking at the message structure. So every HL7 message has its own structure, right? So let's look at those structural aspects. A message can be divided into segments, meaning which can be compared to shelves. Every segment can further be divided into fields. Fields can be divided into components. Components can be divided into subcomponents. This is like a tree. You have the stem, you have branches, you have sub branches, you have leaves, and you have leaflets. Right? In the same way, every HL7 message has segments. Segments has fields, fields has components, components has subcomponents. Okay. So this is a representation of the HL7 message structure. You can see that we have multiple segments. There are 4 segments here, and each segment is divided into various fields. Fields can be again divided into components. Components can be again divided into subcomponents. So each one of these entities are subsets of the other entity. Okay, meaning segments will have fields. Within fields, you will have components. Within components, you will have subcomponents. Okay. Now that being said, before we look at a sample HL7 message, we need to understand the grammatical syntaxes that we want to use for HL7 messaging. Right? So what is that syntax? Let's see. So like the English language, we have full stop to let us know the end of the end of the sentence. Then we have comma to give a pause. And then we have space between 2 words. Space between 2 words to let us know that um, these are 2 different words altogether, right? In the same way, we have some grammatical syntaxes for HL7 message. So here, first one is segment terminator. So that will indicate the end of the segment. Okay, this is like full stop in English language. Then you have field separator. This is like space, which will separate 2 words. In the same way, a field separator will separate 2 fields. Okay, and the symbol that you're seeing here is called as pipe. So this pipe symbol is used in order to differentiate 2 fields or separate 2 fields like a wall. Okay, the way one compartment is divided from another compartment in a shelf, you will have a slide or this field separator to separate 2 fields. Within fields, you will have components. Components are separated with the help of a symbol called as caret or a cap. Okay, so caret is used to separate 2 components. We'll talk about rest of the 3 as and when we progress and look at the HL7 message structure. Okay, as of now, we need to understand the first 3, specifically these 2, field separator and component separator. Now let us take a look at sample HL7 message. So whatever you are seeing on the screen is a sample HL7 message. Here we have 5 segments. Okay, every segment has its own name. The way we have had the architecture in the rack, first rack is for clothes, second rack is for books, third rack is for some material. In the same way, every segment will have its own name. And the first 3 letters of that segment will tell you what that name is. Okay. For example, here we have MSH, EVN, PID, NK1, PV1, and each of these are acronyms. They have their own full forms and they will represent what kind of data that particular segment is transacting. Okay. Did you guys lose the screen share?
Yes.
Yes.
1 second. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So each segment, so segment number 1 that we are seeing here is MSH, that stands for message segment header. For us to easily relate and understand, let's talk about this segment, which is PID. PID stands for patient identification. So this segment will have all the information pertaining to the patient, whether his name, his address, his date of birth, his gender, all of that information is available here in this particular segment. So here you can see that we have the address. Here you can see that we have the date of birth. Here you can see that we have the name of the patient. Here you can see that there is a gender information. So in order to identify the patient, all the patient demographic related data will be present in PID segment. Okay, so that's how we need to read this message. So in tomorrow's session, we will take a look at deeper look at how do we read this message, how do we separate two fields, how pipe is used here, how that full stop, which is nothing but carriage return, is used, and we'll also talk about how the components within the fields are separated from each other, and how we can read them, and how we can use the navigation methodology in order to interpret the HL7 message that we see. Okay, so we'll conclude today's session here, but I will cover about couple of aspects regarding the training. So this training will continue every day at the very same time for from 7 a.m. Indian time to 8 a.m. Indian time. It will be for 1 hour every day. 45 minutes we'll have the session. Last 15 minutes we'll dedicate for 10 or 15 minutes we'll dedicate for questionnaires, and we will discuss on that questionnaires. Okay, and then this would run for 6 weeks. We'll have uh, five sessions a week, which is Monday to Friday US time, Tuesday to Saturday Indian time. Okay, and tomorrow's session will also be a free demo session. So whoever wants to join can join tomorrow as well. But from third session, people who have enrolled for the entire training will be able to continue through the rest of the sessions. Just in case if you couldn't attend the session any day, we upload the content, or we upload the videos every day onto the Google Drive, and that Google Drive access will be provided to people who have enrolled for the training, and they can go through the recorded session and they can ping me on WhatsApp. We'll be creating a WhatsApp group with the enrolled members so that it will be easy for communicating about any issues throughout the training. So in case if they have any questions, they can reach out to me and I will help them to I'll answer them and help them understand them in case if someone has any doubts. Right. So if you couldn't make it to the session, you have to go through the recording and be ready for the next session for the next day. And this HL7 training is divided into 3 parts. Number 1, first part would be about HL7 message standard. So in the first 7 to 8 sessions, we'll be talking explicitly about what are the various message types that we have, what are the event types that we have, what are the most frequently used event types, and what are their structures. Second part would be a kind of middle layer. A couple of sessions will be prerequisite sessions for us to um, have some technical background like networking and little bit about JavaScripting and E4X. So those prerequisites are needed for us to start building HL7 messages using Mirth Connect, which is the third section. So in Mirth Connect sessions, it is completely technical, where we'll be seeing how to construct the messages that we have seen in the first section. So it's not just that understanding HL7, but you also need to develop HL7 messages. So how we can use Mirth Connect to develop those messages, how we can use Mirth Connect to transact those messages, what are the various connectivity models that you can use, will be covered in the third section. So that is how the training is divided into. In the last 2 sessions, I'll be talking about certification. How can you prepare for certification? What are the chapters that you have to go through? and I will be covering few specific topics that are very, very important. But by the end of this course, if you're planning for your certification, 70% of your syllabus will be done. 65 to 70% of your syllabus will be done. You have to prepare for rest of 30% of it. Okay, but I'll provide guidance on how to go ahead and prepare for the rest of 30% as well. So let's open up for questions. Any questions from anyone? So Javier is asking, is there a specific library in JavaScript for HL7? No. We will be using the regular JavaScripting itself, Javier. But we'll be touching on very basic stuff that is needed for Mirth Connect. JavaScript is has emerged as a complete programming language today, right? But all of that is not necessary. I'll be covering the topics that are needed only for Mirth Connect. Sorry, Bala, you were asking something?
No, I was sending you a question like, can we do certifications without having to take the trainings? I guess that
From next
training,
gen.
yeah,
Yeah,
from there.
no, you cannot. Their
Oh, we have.
program is tied up. Yeah, their program is tied up. So basically, you have to. So you're talking about next gen certification, right? Specifically, Mirth Connect certification.
Mm-hmm. Or is there any other third party that can give it? Because Mets Connect is owned by Next Gen, right?
Yes, it is owned by NextGen, and only they are the only authorized people to go ahead and uh,
Okay.
certify that you are certified by that particular product owners.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, as you mentioned, it costs $4,000, I guess, not 5,000. And it is a 3-day program that they conduct. Earlier, there was no scope of online, but after COVID, they started online as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah, it is pretty costly.
Yep. Few of my colleagues took it. I
Yeah.
missed them.
Yeah. Yeah. If you have an opportunity, I would recommend definitely go ahead and take it if you want that certification.
Yeah, I missed the boat. I need to
Yeah.
see another.
Okay. No worries.
Hi, I just wanted to ask that what
Hey,
opportunities are out there for HL7?
sorry, I missed the first part. Can you repeat your question, please?
I wanted to ask that what opportunities are out there when you complete HL7?
Okay. You are in the US?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. In the US, there are loads of opportunities. You can see there are multiple roles that you can perform when you know about HL7, depending on what you are interested in. If you want to become a developer, where you need to be very technically strong and know about how to develop interfaces and all. But if for the developing aspect, you need to understand about JavaScripting, E4X, and XML, and all of those aspects. But if you want to, if you just know HL7, and if you want, you can become a business analyst. Business analyst is a role where you don't need to be technical, or product owner, where you don't need to be technical, where you can know about HL7 and draft all the business requirements and create business requirement documents as a business analyst. So that is another role, which is a non-technical role. There are other roles like implementation analyst who will implement the interfaces that are developed by the developers. And there are other roles like support application support role, where you'll be supporting HL7 interfaces which are in production. Right? So there are various categories based on your ease of your convenience, uh, or your interest in which specific sector. You can get into that specific one. But opportunities are many. All of these different roles that I mentioned have loads of opportunities in the US. Because every hospital in the US, every clinical entity in the US uses HL7. So it is an essential aspect. That's the reason number of job opportunities are also more.
Okay.
Any other questions from anyone? All right, I'm not hearing anything. So let us, okay. I didn't get the name. Samsung, it's showing as Samsung. May I know what's your name?
Ishan.
Ishan. Hey, Ishan. Hi. Yeah, there are opportunities in Canada too. Not as robust as in the US, but yeah, I have my friends in Canada who are working in HL7 space. Uh, there are HL7 and Fire-based companies in Canada. So yeah, opportunities are there in Canada too.
Thanks.
Yeah, hi, Dixon.
Hey, Peter. Peter
Yeah,
Parker. Nice name.
I want to ask, after this training, do we have to like pay to take the certification? And I don't know how much is the cost of it, the
Yeah.
certification from next gen.
Certificate for next gen is $4,000.
Okay.
And Bala mentioned that it's $5,000. So I'm not very sure. It may be around $4,000 to $5,000. And then you have the HL7 certification separately. That would cost you $329. And yes, you have to pay for that certification and then give the certification. So two different certifications altogether.
Is it a package bought by class or single individual pay $4,000?
Which one? You mean this training?
The certification.
No. Yeah, it is packaged. Sorry. If you're asking about Mirth Connect certification, it is a packaged training where you will have 3 days of training. And at the end of the third day, those 3 days you will be taught about Mirth Connect by the next gen employees. And you will be given some assignments. If you are able to complete that assignments by the third day, then you will be awarded a certification.
How important is that certification?
I don't have Mirth certification. So it is not very important to have Mirth certification. It just adds, definitely adds credibility if you have a certification, but I know 80% of the people don't have it. So the answer is it is not very much essential that you should be certified in Mirth Connect. If you have,
Okay.
then that's an added advantage. That's all.
But you don't really need it.
Yeah, you don't really need it.
Okay.
No, wherever I was working in the past 5 to 6 years, I don't know anyone who had certification. I worked with around 50, 70 people.
If your employer pays for that, take it. That's what I can
Of
say.
course. Any other questions from anyone?
I have a question.
Sure.
If I plan to do a PhD in
Mm-hmm.
informatics,
Mm-hmm.
is this class of any help to me? Will I have any added advantage?
It depends on what is the choice of data informatics you are planning to get into. See, there is healthcare data informatics that you can get into. If you're planning to get into that specific field of healthcare data, then this is definitely an advantage. It is not just an advantage, but it is essential. But if it is other sectors,
it's health informatics.
if it is health informatics, then this is an essential factor. Knowing the HL7 health level data standards in terms of HL7 V2, fire, these are very much essential.
Okay.
So I had a student from New Zealand who was also working in healthcare informatics itself. So he was part of our HL7 and fire training.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions from anyone? Okay, Javier is asking what is the repeat about this training and what is the cost? Cost, you need to talk to Shrinivas. Shrinivas has posted his contact information in the chat. So you can reach out to Shrinivas for further information on the cost factor. All the admin part will be taken care by Shrinivas. So you can talk to him. Second thing about the training, do you have any specific question regarding the training? Or is it just the cost factor that you wanted to understand? Okay, all right. Okay, so if you do not have any questions, I think we can conclude today's session here. We'll connect tomorrow. You all have a very good day. We'll catch up tomorrow and continue how to look at HL7 message structure. If you are interested for tomorrow's session as well, you are free to join, and we'll see how to read the message structure and all. But if you're considering enrolling, please reach out to Shrinivas. He will go ahead and guide you and let you know how to get enrolled.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. You all have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Dixon. Bye.
Thanks, Dixon.
Thank you.
Have a good
Thank
day.
you.
Thank you, Dixon.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.